Hi, I'm Jonathan Burnham, aka Kalos, and today we're going to take a tour of Mid-Ohio. We're going to do a lap guide there, and we're going to do it in the Dodge Viper GTSR. I'm going to share my base multiplayer tune I use for this car, and also the adjustments I made for Mid-Ohio. Both of these tunes are public, and as well, you can just take what you see in the video, copy it, and so you can make your own adjustments to suit you. I have no issue with that. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now we're at Mid-Ohio. Let's do a little bit of a lap walkthrough and a bit of a lap guide. I'll show you where I brake and how I take corners and kind of explain things to you. It doesn't really have to do with the Viper, but I feel Mid-Ohio is a really technical circuit and it might help people to understand a bit how to take this course. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, we'll All right, coming into corner one, the first corner of the track. This is probably the only real high-speed corner on the track. Mid-Ohio really has a lot of low-speed technical corners, and the first part of it has some long straights. So what are we looking for as we come up to this? We're looking for the 100 board, and I'll point them out. We're looking for the 100 board and the start of that pavement right there where the grass ends. And our turn-in point is actually right before that, halfway in between the 100 board and that pavement where the grass ends. Here, I'll come out to this so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. What we're looking for is the black part of the pavement. You can cut this corner without penalty, and you're probably going to see that a lot in multiplayer until it gets fixed. For the sake of this video, I've done everything without the track cut. So for this lap guide, we're just going to ignore the track cut for now. You're looking for this black tarmac in the start of that curb. You do not want to get on that curb. You want to actually get right next to it. Now, don't apex too early. So don't get on the throttle too early or you'll go off into the grass. It's at this point you're starting to get onto the throttle. And then once you have the right angle towards the end of the curb, you're hammering the throttle and trying to use that higher diff to bring the rear end out. And you'll literally, if you do it right, you'll come out right on this curbing and right next to these cones. Go a little farther out, you'll be in the grass. Yeah, the sake of this video is not to show you how to use the shortcut. I will include, you'll gain, if you cut that corner, you'll gain about, I found with my tune, about 3 to 4 tenths. With the default tune though, I could gain upwards of like 6 tenths off that corner. So for this turn, the hairpin, turn 2, we're actually looking to brake right before the 50 board. Again, let me change views. So if you're watching this and use chase cam, right about here. The fastest way to get through this corner, I found it's a bit of a wide hairpin, so it's real tricky. You can double apex it, which is the fastest way through the corner. Or you can go in deep, which is a bit dangerous because if you get it wrong or you lock up the brakes just a tiny bit, you'll end up in the grass. However, if you get this deep corner and you get it turned back in, you're already going to be, your rear end's going to start coming out. You're going to be sliding out and you'll be able to get on the throttle sooner and get a much faster exit speed. So it's slightly, it turns out where the segment at the end of this pavement kind of tells you your score. It's a little slower, but you have a much higher exit speed, and then you'll have a much you'll gain a couple tenths down the straight. Well, all right, so going down the straight. Our braking point is not that overhead crane. What I'm looking for is the 200 board. And for me, I start hitting the brake right as, let's see, you can see the 200 board there, right? I'll mark it out. Right as it goes hidden by my pillars there is when I start braking. Again, I'll come out for those who do chase cam. So right about there. So basically if you're in chase cam right after the 300 board, for me, I'm looking for the 200 board. This can be very difficult to spot at night. I do tend to run with the braking line on for low visibility reasons where it's hard to spot your braking markers. But if you're running without it, right after the 300 board or where that 200 crosses your pillars is a good spot. You'll brake hard and then start trail braking almost immediately to swing the rear end around so that you can straighten out. Let me change views again. This curbing to the right. If you get on it, it can really upset your car. Maybe if you might be able to gain some time if you can get your damper set to take that curb without losing speed. But in general, I'm going to want to be turned so that I'm taking the corner without hitting the curbing. I'm kind of apexing right here and straightening the car out and going full throttle. Go full throttle to here, and you don't need to go out wide. This corner, you lose a lot of time setting yourself up to go out wide, and you don't really gain much on the exit speed because of how short the area afterwards is. Plus, the hill is tricky too. Don't mind me. So you're going wide, you'll brake kind of up the hill and really fight to turn the car in. You're going to have to be really patient on the throttle. Get on the throttle too soon before you crest this hill and the rear end will come out on you. But as soon as you crest the hill, you're going to come out to probably about the middle of the track. I keep it a little closer to the left. You don't want to go all the way to the curbing because you're going to set yourself up for the next set of corners. Now, the quickest way through this corner would probably be to brake around the 50. But we're not going to do that. We're going to go to the beginning of this tarmac here to be our braking point. And then we will brake here. And you got to get slowed down because if you go wide here, you're going to mess up the whole next section of corners. You're going to get turned in. If you careful with this curbing, if you clip the very edge of it, you'll be okay. But you'll want to come out of the corner kind of in the middle so that you can see the where that tire barrier ends. You're seeing that left curbing. And what you're doing is you're coming on full throttle and turning in and getting all over this curbing. Now be very careful. If you're full throttle when you hit this curbing, it can really unsettle the car and cause it to over rotate. I made some damper adjustments to help with that, but still just the tiniest lift and you'll go over it steady. As you come off, you're full throttle. Now this hill, with the default cars, because they're so understeer and have so much rear downforce, tend to be okay. But with a faster tune, you got to be really careful coming over that hill. If you got it lined up right, you can come full throttle. But you got to be careful. Usually I'll be in about third gear. Don't really want to hit that curbing. And we're looking at the start of this yellow curbing right here for our braking marker. Go back out in the chase cam. And we're trying to get lined up as straight as we can. You don't generally need to brake hard here. You're just trying to bleed off a tiny bit of speed because you want to carry a lot of speed through this corner. Just a tiny bit of brake, shift down the second, and get turned in over here. Now, I found it's okay to kind of clip the curb a tiny bit. You don't want to clip it too much. because as you're coming over this crest, you're getting on the throttle. Ideally, you're already at full throttle, but you might be fighting to get on the throttle. And you don't want to go out wide of this curbing or hit the grass. And that allows you to get a good run out of that corner and down this section. This is another technical spot. You see the 200 board. What I look for my kind of brake marker is that little bend right there where the pavement comes out right before the 100 board. Now, you can't really see, but as you're braking at this spot and turning, the curbing becomes visible. And at this point, again, it's one of those ones you really don't want to get up on it. You just want to get right next to it. And if you're going and hitting full throttle right as you're apexing it, you got to be a little careful, because if you get the angle wrong, you're going to have to come off the gas to straighten out the car. Now for this last corner, one of the trickiest corners and one of the ones that require the most patience. Here, let me come out. You can kind of see this crest in the hill. That's what we're looking for. We're coming up the hill. Got a lot of speed. You're going to brake pretty hard for this one. So as right before you crest it, you want to kind of be on the brakes already. Kind of starting to brake in as you're cresting. You're going to go hard on the brakes. Let the car kind of drift out wide a little bit. In this car, I'll be in second gear. And then you'll slightly get on the throttle. If you can use the throttle to kind of rotate the rear around, that's okay. But you got to be really patient. I mean, you're talking really low amounts of throttle. Just sometimes 10 to 20%. And you're just really fighting to I'll have pretty good amount of steering angle to get the car to turn in. And here you got to be patient. Patience. And then full throttle. As you're coming across this last corner, do not hit the curb. You want to straighten it out so that you're going right along the curb and you're staying full throttle. If you turn in too much, there's a little bit of a bump over there that's going to unsettle your car. But if you have it straight, you can maintain full throttle. And then as you're coming out, just turn it a little bit to get it lined up for the final stretch and back down towards turn 1. So that's a tour of Mid-Ohio. And let's start getting into the laps. Now, this is the corner cut I'm talking about. If you cut inside to the pit lane, you can just go around that curbing and then come out with a much wider corner and much more greater exit speed. This is the lap I did with the default tune, the base one you would go into multiplayer with. I wanted a baseline to know right about what the base time I would get, so that I could see what improvement using my tune versus using the default tune was. This is my base multiplayer tune for the Dodge Viper. Again, it was one I made at Road America. You can see my tire pressures are actually pretty low. I went through my process and kept lowering them, and that's where I ended up before I started losing lap time. And then we'll move over to gearing. I definitely adjusted the gearing quite a bit. You want to shift at 5,500 because that's where the peak power of the Viper is, like 51, 52. And if you go all the way to the red line at 63, you'll actually be losing power. Alignment, negative 1.7, negative 0.8, zeroed out toe, caster angle 7. Really stiff suspension, 40 on the front, 38 on the rear. At Road America, I didn't have any issues getting around the slower corners with this setup. Springs, I did drop the springs a little bit and raise the ride height a little bit, and I kind of liked where it settled out. Just some small adjustment to the dampers. 2.9 on the front, 3.1. I lowered the bump and raised the rebound a bit. I know some people say you go really low on the bump and really high on the rebound. That's been a traditional Forza thing. I haven't really seen much gains from doing that yet. Suspension geometry, I don't remember if I made any changes, but you can see what it is. 20.5 on the anti-dive, negative 2.3 on the anti-squat. Aero, this is another one of those cars that gain a lot balance-wise by dropping the rear all the way out. If I was on a higher downforce track like Laguna Seca, I would actually go max front and kind of raise the rear by the amount the front went up. So like if I want to take this Laguna Seca, I'd go to 344 and then add 44 to 375 for the rear and maybe a bit more for the rear at Laguna Seca. But at Road America, I found 300 was enough to kind of get rid of the oversteer that I didn't like going through the higher speed corners, going around the carousel. It was enough to get through the kink, and I wanted the extra speed. So 300 in the front, 331 on the rear. Brake balance 49. All my brake pressures are 100. And the differential, I ended up adding some to 72. It's not like the KTM where I went to 100. 72 was enough. And deceleration was pretty stable at 15. So that was pretty much enough. 105 for the force feedback, 100 on the steering lock for this car. Now I'm running my base tune that I built at Road America with no tweaks. I just want to see how the car behaves. It was a pretty significant improvement, maybe not as much as I thought I might get, but definitely the car was much more turnable. But like I expected, it was a bit jittery and a bit unstable, making consistency with it a bit difficult. So I could go faster. I could consistently go faster than I could with the default tune, but I was having difficulty getting consistent lap times. This is the final lap I did. I didn't gain quite the time I had hoped for. Really, the balance of the car from the Road America tune was pretty good already. The biggest issue was that it was twitchy, that it was unstable at many points of the track. So a lot of the time I spent was experimenting, and then I kind of came back to the original tune and then just try to make it more stable so I could get consistent laps. Now, if you watch the Delta on this lap, you'll see that there's definitely time to be gained compared to what I actually ended up with. So I could probably get a couple more tenths out of this lap. Again, I didn't use the first corner cut that is you can do right now without a penalty, and that should eventually get fixed. But there is another 3 to 5 tenths to be gained by making that corner cut. All in all, the car handles this track pretty well. Most of the changes I made were pretty minor, and for the most part, I'm kind of happy with this lap. The Viper is a solid car. I recommend it, and if you like my tunes, I think you'll like this one. Okay, this is my final tune for Mid-Ohio. It's not a whole lot different than the Road America tune that I started with. The PSI is the same. I left the gearing the same. Pretty happy where the gift shears were happening. I didn't feel like I needed a tighter band. That would have gained me a whole lot of time. Alignment stays the same. The roll bars shifted a little bit. I brought the rears and the front even, just trying to get a little more rotation around the slower corners, but we still ended up much stiffer than I thought we would. So yeah, the Viper was just very stable and absorbed that kind of rolling things in ways some of the other GT cars I had did not. I was able to keep the roll bars pretty stiff for that responsiveness. Didn't change anything with the springs or ride height or the dampers or the suspension geometry. This is where I made a change. Again, as I said during my lap, I went back to kind of the base Road America tune, And then I just added enough downforce to provide the stability I needed to get through the technical section. I found going kind of full downforce, like raising the front all the way up and bringing the rear up with it, didn't really gain me much time through that slower technical course portion, but did slow me down on the faster sections of the track. This was enough just to stabilize it through that section. So I brought it up 20 in the front and 20 in the rear, and kept the aero balance about the same. I found if I added more to the rear for more rear end stability, I just understeered through the technical section too much. Brake balance, I did lower from 49 to 48. Again, just to get a little more rotation. I tried going 47, but then it just became a little too unstable under the brakes. I did raise the acceleration up to 78 just to get from 72, just to get a little more on power rotation out of some of these slower corners, so I could kind of steer with the throttle. And the deceleration, I definitely lowered a good bit down to 11. I kind of kept going down like, okay, and it was staying stable. And 11 is where I found to be a pretty good spot. And again, force feedback 105, steering lock range 100, and degree of rotation on my wheel is 900. Go ahead and back and freeze frame it so you can copy this and use it for yourself, or you can download it if you want.